The mouse of the day is water polo William, and he was known throughout the mouse community not just for his love of cheese, but also for his deep, almost obsessive passion for water polo. Now, if you've never heard of a mouse playing water polo before, you're not alone. Most mice in the village couldn't even imagine a life beyond their burrows, their tunnels, and their carefully collected cheese wheels. But William, he had dreams of making a name for himself in the sport that no other mice had even attempted. It all started when William was just a young mouse. His family lived near the big pond at the end of the village, and every day he would spend hours and hours watching the ducks, the frogs, and other creatures swimming gracefully across the water's surface, while other mice were learning how to dig the perfect burrow or navigate through the village's maze of tunnels. William was captivated more by the water. He loved the way it sparkled in the sunlight, the way its waves rippled when the wind blew, the way the creatures moved effortlessly through it. One afternoon, after watching the frogs jump in and out of the water, William had an idea. Now, why couldn't he be part of the water world too? He didn't want to just swim. No, William wanted to do something bigger, something no mouse had ever done before. That's when he saw it. A frog leapt into the air, chasing after a small floating leaf and batted it across the pond. The leaf skimmed the surface of the water, bouncing off the ripples, and in that moment, the idea struck him. Water polo. Water polo, William, he muttered to himself, his eyes lighting up. Of course. He'd heard stories from the village elders about human sports, games where they threw balls around in the pool and called it water polo. Why couldn't mice do the same thing? Sure, they were smaller, and sure, no mice had ever played in this sport before, but William didn't see any reason why he couldn't do it. He was determined to make it happen. That evening, William could not stop thinking about that game. He rushed back to his burrow, his mind racing with ideas. The first thing he needed was a team. But who would be crazy enough to play water polo with him? Most mice avoided water at all costs. It was dangerous, unpredictable, and to be honest, most of them weren't great swimmers. Still, William wasn't one to back down from a challenge. The next morning, William set out to find his teammates. He started with his best friend, Timmy, Tinkering Timmy. He was a bit hesitant at first. Timmy wasn't much of the adventuring type. He preferred his quiet life collecting cheese in his burrow and just tinkering with stuff mainly. But William's passionate pitch was enough to convince him. Next came Daisy, one of the fastest mice in the village. She was always up for something new and exciting, and when William told her about the plan, she was intrigued. Water polo? Sounds like fun. I'm in, she said with a grin. Slowly but surely, William built his team. They were a ragtag group of mice, none of whom had any experience with water sports or water in general, but they were eager to give it a shot. They practiced day in and day out, learning how to swim with speed and control, how to bat small pebbles across the water's surface, and most importantly, how to work together as a team. At first, it was a disaster. The mice struggled to stay afloat, let alone play the game. They fumbled the pebbles, missed passes, and often ended up splashing each other helplessly. But William knew he was nothing if he wasn't determined. He encouraged his teammates, reminding them that no one had ever done this before and that they were making history. Slowly but surely, they improved. Timmy became a surprisingly good goalkeeper, using his quick reflexes to bat away incoming pebbles, while Daisy excelled at speed, darting across the water like a fish. This team, which William had named the Aqua Mice, began to find their rhythm finally. The game became faster, more intense, and the excitement spread throughout the village. Mice who had once scoffed at the idea of water polo were now gathering by the pond to watch the Aqua Mice practice. One evening, after an especially successful practice session, William sat on the edge of the pond, his fur damp but his heart full of pride. He stared out at the water, thinking about how far they'd come, but still, something bothered him. Sure, they were playing amongst themselves, but was that really enough? William wanted more. He wanted the Aqua Mice to compete, to prove to the world, or at least to the village, that mice could play water polo just as well as any human could. That's when the idea struck him. A tournament, but not just any tournament. A village-wide tournament. He envisioned teams from every corner of the village coming together to compete in the first ever Mouse Water Polo Championship. It would be an event to remember, something that would put water polo on the map for mice everywhere. So the next morning, William got to work. He gathered his teammates and told them about the plan. They were hesitant at first. After all, who would be so brave enough to challenge the Aqua Mice in the water? But William was persuasive, and soon they were all on board with this idea. They spent the next few days spreading the word, putting posters up all around the village, announcing the tournament, and inviting any mouse who was brave enough to form a team and compete. At first, there were only a few mice interested, mostly the younger, more adventurous ones, but as the days went on, more and more mice became curious about this strange new sport. Before long, there were enough teams to fill the tournament bracket. The big day had finally arrived. The pond was buzzing with excitement. Mice from all over the village had gathered to watch the event. Some curious, others skeptical, but all eager to see what this water polo was all about. William stood proudly at the edge of the pond. His teammates gathered around him as he prepared to give a short speech to kick off the tournament. "Welcome, everyone," William began, his voice carrying across the pond. "Today we're making history. Water polo is something new for us, something different, but I believe it's a sport that can bring us together in a way we've never seen before. So let's have some fun, play hard, and may the best team win. Let's go, Vros." The crowd cheered and the tournament began. Yay! the Aqua Mice played their first match, facing off against a team of mice who called themselves the Pond Splashers. The game was fast-paced and chaotic, with mice darting through the water, splashing all around, and batting the pebble back and forth. Timmy stood strong in the goal, while Daisy zoomed across the pond, scoring 2 quick goals to achieve the Aqua Mice an early lead. As the tournament progressed, it became clear that the Aqua Mice were the team to beat. They sailed through the early rounds, defeating team after team with their speed, teamwork, and skill, but as the final match approached, William knew that they were about to face their toughest challenge yet. The Wave Riders, a team of older, more experienced mice who had spent years swimming in the pond. And although they were new to water polo, they were very experienced swimmers and some tough competition. The final match was intense from the very start. The Wave Riders were strong and coordinated, and they gave the Aqua Mice a run for their money. The two teams traded goals back and forth, the pebble skimming across the water as the crowd watched in awe. Every splash, every pass, every save was met with cheers from the spectators who had quickly become invested in the sport. Now, by the time the match reached its final minutes, the score was tied, and both teams were exhausted. The Aqua Mice had given it their all, but the Wave Riders were relentless. William could feel the tension rising, his heart pounding in his chest as he scanned the pond for an opening. Then, with just seconds left on the clock, Daisy made a daring move. She swam faster than anyone had ever seen, cutting through the water like an arrow. She reached the pebble just as it was about to be intercepted by a Wave Rider, and with a swift flick of her paw, she sent it flying across the pond, straight into the goal. The crowd erupted into cheers. The Aqua Mice had done it. They had won the first ever Mouse Water Polo Championship. William floated in the water, breathing hard but grinning from ear to ear. His team swam over to him and they all celebrated, their paws raised in victory. The crowd chanted their names, and for a brief moment, it felt like the whole village was united in excitement for this strange new sport. As the sun set over the pond, casting a warm orange glow over the water, William stood on the shore, watching as the other mice slowly trickled away, still talking excitedly about the tournament. He couldn't believe how far they'd come. What was once an impossible idea was now a village-wide sensation. But for William, the victory wasn't just about winning a game. It was about proving that anything was possible, even for a mouse. For William, water polo wasn't just a sport. It was a symbol of belief that mice could do more than anyone thought they could, that they could break boundaries and achieve things that no one had ever dreamed of. That night, as William lay in his burrow, his fur still damp from the day's games, he smiled to himself. This was just the beginning. Water polo wasn't going to be a one-time event, and Water Polo William was so proud to be the one to start it all. Do you guys mess with Water Polo William?